name is Zhi. I'm a graduate student studying biostatistics at USC, so it's like our drive from here. Yeah, I see a lot of familiar faces. I also organize LA, our users group, and then primarily based on the health campus at USC as well. So if you're visiting downtown, let me know, and then I'll be there to welcome you. And so today I'm going to talk about. Let me do a really quick poll. How many of you use 23andMe? Oh, cool. Yeah. How many of you have done topic modeling before? Yay. Awesome. You're going to see a really nice parallel of like how the topic reflecting in genomic data. How many of you have personally analyzed your Twitter or YouTube or WhatsApp data or Spotify data? Oh, okay. So the reason I ask those questions is because I feel like one day all the genetic tests you have done online, the genomic data will be just as easy as the data you have right now as Twitter or Spotify soundtracks. You can just easily track them. And even though recently when I was trying to go through all the data so you can have on the 23andMe, and then somatic mutation data was actually one of the data set that they're trying to extract from your samples. So what I'm going to show you over here is to use the topic modeling, algorithms and trying to apply to the genetic data. And then I promise this is going to be requires the least biological information. We're not going to go through a lot of terminology that I not even know. Like I come from a chemistry background, so I have the same level of biological background as you do. So I know the number of slides is a little bit intimidating because I know one of the speakers didn't show up, so I kind of make a little bit more. But the first part of the talk will be just a lot of pictures. We get a really good concept of what topic modeling is in genetic data. And then the second part, I think I'm gonna use the tools I primarily use, the Bayesian language, and trying to see how everything is gonna sort it out if we're gonna model in a Bayesian way. Okay, so. For those of you who have never heard about topic model, I'm gonna go through a really quick example of what it looks like, and then have the genetic data map into those concepts, so you will see how the topic looks like if you use genetic data. And also what is the general application, and then for those you already know about it, this is a really good example just to learn how this model will essentially extend its application not just within the text world, but to another world you have never think about before, biological world, or even to impact the possibility that people are going to develop personalized medicine, and also have to come up with a targeted therapy. Okay. So when we usually extract, topics, we're talking about books, customer, reviews, tweets, and then those probably doesn't require much of the domain knowledge. Any people can read it. And then for some people, they even to use it to read, to trying to understand the scientific journals. You don't have to read every single of them. And then I even ran into someone from our studio conference earlier this year. He would just use it to, to understand those medical records from the patients, even without any knowledge about the medical knowledge. And then what if there's some scenarios you just cannot read them? For example, something like this. If you just look at them for even just 10 minutes, you have no idea we're going to read it from this. So this is the time that we actually, can use to understand what the things I just showed you really reflected. So all of you carry a human genome, and then for the interactions we have every day, including like internally or externally, interact with the exposures, you actually can be reflected in the human genome that can be later captured. So for example, this is some of the examples you have, the DNA replications you have, you're exposed to chemicals, and even just sunlight, you walk outside, you're gonna affect your human genomes. But later on, it's gonna give a chance for the scientist or doctor to understand, what's your personal history of exposures in the past. So everybody's gonna have them on. And then for the past 20 years or so, the analysis of this part of data is quite, I would say, naive, just to do a frequency. People have seen a lot of patterns in the past, but there's no general way just to capture what is really behind. And then we're not even talking about doing any statistical analysis on the top of it. Okay, so of course, with the advance of technologies, the data has been triple doubles in the really fast manners. So in a way that we really need a really powerful masters and the machines to be able to extract this data. Okay, so where do you get this data? Well, I'm not talking about like grab your own tissues or just split in a tube, send it to somewhere, and then actually there's a lot of publicly available database online. You can just download right now. You don't have to go through any applications or so, and this data can be just quickly downloaded to your computer for you to start an analysis. But first we have to know what kind of analysis are we doing over here. Okay, so in the later, about like 5 to 10 slides, I'm gonna quickly go through what a topic model is. So just judging by the topic, just by the name of this model, we're gonna extract something really conceptual and abstract from the things, and then we're gonna usually start with the documents. And then the documents contains a wide range of like things there. The topics can be only focused on, for example, there's like some examples over here you probably couldn't see. The first box is like bike, car, and then the second one can be just like, sports, coach, players, and the last one will be just something else. So those things get a chance to be reflected in the document, but with quite different frequencies. But this gives you a basic concept of the components there. You start with the documents, you see the words in the documents, but you don't really see the topics. Topics is something that human being has been, summarized from this thing. So the topic itself is something that data you have to be, through some modeling, be able to get out of it. And then, of course, one single document, we think like it's unique. Even though these documents can be from the same field, but depends on the author and then the things, the people who wrote this, it wouldn't be exactly the same. And also, we think that in terms of like how to quantify the topics, it has a fraction attached to it. And then if we normalize it in a way, we think it's just something between 0 and 1. So this is like in one single document, we think it's unique, and then every single topic is going to have a fraction attached to it. And then within the topic, so what is in the topic? So we think like the topics are consistent across the documents. So we are not just going to have like one single topic unique to this document. We think this topic is a commonly shared across different documents. So in that case, you're just going to see a different frequency reflected by the topic. Maybe in some of the documents you have a much higher or representative of some topic compared to another documents. And then, but in the case, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but be able to choose a number of topics can be a really headache in a way. So there's a lot of methods that have been developed over here and trying to provide a really good, easy way to come up with the optimum number of topics. And then, so now you know what is in the document and then the topics. Then here you're going to have a really nice hierarchical structures. Will be a single document contains topics with different weights. The fractions you have between 0 and 1. And then a topic will be just like a unique distribution across different words. So this pretty much just a really simple example of what topic modeling is. And of course, topics are all unknown. We have to come up with it, and then also the fractions have to be estimated from the models as well. And so that kind of things kind of throw you a little bit. You will think about, okay, I need a really concrete example. So this is a really good website to go to. So this is really simple. You don't need to understand what is behind. It's just pure emojis. So what they're going to do is they're going to treat each emoji as a word, and now you can do the topic modeling just using those emojis. And then, for example, and this is just some of the documents you can generate, each the document by itself, and also frequencies or numbers depends what you have. And of course, it's an interactive app. You can, by changing some of the parameters, to give you a really good sense of what's going to change the topics after that. So definitely try out this website. Okay, so back to my data. So what does the data I use look like in this way, the genetic data? So this is what it looks like. Usually you start with, of course, samples you collected from the patients, and then from each of the samples, we're going to look at the alleles. So alleles that, we have different chromosomes, so we'll be using the chromosome and also the specific positions in that chromosome, trying to understand more the information around that mutations. And then since it's a mutation, it's something, change from A to B, or in this case, they only have like 4 different kinds of alleles, so you only have like ACGT. So what they're gonna use is to grab the reference alleles, is what it's used to be, and then also trying to, to obtain the alleles that you change it to. So now you have just like a really simple data set with 5 columns: the samples, the chromosome, the position, reference genome, and alternative alleles. So the reason I mentioned to this, because if you only have something like 4 elements, change it to another 4 elements, that's not enough to do like a topic modeling, because think about the words you're gonna have. You have like 10,000 different words out there. So a really smart like scientist, they actually figure out a way to expand the dictionary you have. It's just by looking at the neighborhood. So think about this. And then this is just like, before you don't really, look at the neighborhood of these mutations, you don't have much choices. You only have like 6, frequencies. Then just by looking at them, and then that's a really simple just comparison of the frequencies. Yeah, there is some changes over there, but how much can I really know, just by looking and saying that there's a frequency change, but it's not necessarily, reflected to all the exposures we have seen previously. Are those changes from the internal DNA replication from your body, or are those changes because of the sunlight you expose yourself to? So what the people do is, if you look at the neighborhood of those mutations, for example, you start with the 6 substitution mutations, but after you look at the neighborhood of those mutations, now bang, you're gonna have 1,500 mutations as compared to only have 6 of them. So every single things you have seen in this 1,500 mutation patterns will become your words, and then those are the dictionaries you're gonna start with to do your topic modeling. Okay, so for those of you that who have used topic modeling before, you probably really familiar with these pictures. This is just a visualization of what a topic looks like if you apply this model to text. And you can see different words have popped up because they have a much higher frequency within that topic. And then just to look at them, you have a sense of what this topic look like. Then, okay, right now I'm gonna just like show you a really similar picture of this, but made of genetic data, so many mutations. This is what it looks like. So you also get a chance to see, what's really like represented in that topic of the made of mutations. So you can see that the colors has popped up because it was, represented by certain reference allele changing to something. And then the really good things is, every time you change a data set when you do text mining, you're probably gonna have a different set of topics. Guess what? Human genomes, you only have about right now like 40 topics. That's like the maximum, that's like the scale of the topics you have right now. It doesn't really matter where you find, and then the technology you have right now. Pretty much the topics you have is just like about 40 of them. They're expanding, but it's quite slow. And then this is another different way to visualize as well. You can see the spikes in some of the patterns as compared to you only have like a 6, then you can get to see, within, for example, the first one, within the C changing to T, and then you can know what context and the neighborhood get to appears more often than other kinds.
What's your horizontal axis?
The horizontal ones?
Yeah.
It's the 6 substitution mutations we start with, and then because each of them has a neighborhood,
okay.
So that's why they get like more bars. Yeah. And then this is like just like a map of which mutations or which topics we just seen previously get mapped to different cancer types, and you can see the top of them, there's about like 20 to 30 common cancers you see, and then some of the topics, actually give a name as a signature, only appears in certain cancers, quite of unique. You also can treat it as like an indicator or kind of sort of like a biomarker if you want to study certain like cancer. Okay, so for example, out of like 30 or 40 of them, then this is just like a really, a common 3 signatures or topics that has been associated to some known risk factors. For example, the first one is associated to smoking, and then the second one is the sunlight, and the last one I believe is some of the DNA replication activities. So, let's say that we only have these three, topics. Now, everybody has the different profile. I'm probably going to have a set of fractions. You have a different ones. And then this is just like examples that you can actually, play with data online. Use the Shining app. Okay, so this is just like a profile, what profiles looks like. You start with three topics, and then you get different weights associated to it. And for example, this is just like profiles of one set, and then could be someone else have a different set. And the natural question to ask is, when we look at them, we're gonna say, are they different or not? Especially if this is just we're doing some like as treatments. And then, whereas the control groups, we will essentially going to say the treatment leads to a difference. So this is the ultimate question, and the only question I get to ask in my first chapter of my dissertation is to develop methods to make an inference on the topic modeling. And then, for example, this is just like a quick graph from my first paper. It's like we actually found out that there's two groups. We capture the mutations from the early stage of the tumor development as compared to some of the mutations that only get to appear in the later stage of the tumor. And then we also describe or categorize three topics. And then we want to ask them, we want to ask the question, are they different now? Just by looking at the plots. So this plot is essentially just like plot the fraction, of these three topics. You may say there's a difference, but not really that much because they're really kind of like plotted with each other. So of course my masters get to tell they actually are two different clusters over here. This is just like, a general math to go through, but we're not gonna spend too much time on that. And then this is just like saying that, okay, if you have these new concepts out there, what's the possible application of that? Usually what people do is they use this topic to identify the subgroup in the cancer patients because there have been so many evidence showing in the past. People just, even though they have the same disease or cancer type, they react to the treatment differently. So a lot of study has been looking into the subgroup into the cancers. You probably know, in the breast cancer, there's a few different subgroups that, you might need to receive different, treatments. And this can be essentially comes to really essential tool to just help scientists to define different subgroups. And that's pretty much it, and I hope that the first part of the talk will give you a really good sense of one day if you're gonna download your genetic data, what it gonna look like if you're gonna apply the topic modeling to it. Okay, the second part, I promise, is gonna be some articles. Okay, I'm gonna talk about a little bit about Bayesian. I know 15 minutes is never enough to talk about Bayesian analysis. Can you raise your hand if you have ever done Bayesian analysis in R? Cool, we have a really good foundation. Have any of you used JAGS before? JAGS. JAGS is a Bayesian language. Stan? Cool. WinBUGS? Yeah, oh yeah, WinBUGS as well. Yeah. I want to bring up because my question fall into a really natural path of using Bayesian tool. We have a fairly complex likelihood we want to do inference on the top of that. So a Bayesian tool comes to be really easy because you don't really have to deal with the complex likelihood. You don't have to derive everything. Pretty much you have to do is just to plug and specify them in R. Make sure you have pick a really good prior. Do not like plugging any information in the prior. It might bias your results. Okay, so this plot I made it when I first gave the talk. It was the premiere of the Game of Thrones. The reason I want to bring it up because in the Bayesian analysis, there's three major Bayesian languages out there. You have the WinBUGS, the bug system. Like they have WinBUGS. They start with the OpenBUGS and the multi-bugs, and also they have a really good interface, the R interface, to access those languages. And then, believe it me or not, in the 50s, when University of Cambridge first, invented the bugs, that actually was inspired by a program that want to develop a tool for AI. So 50 or 60 years ago, bugs is the people's takeaway of what they think of AI at that time. And then later on, and then the Martin, which is the the author for JAGS, he actually built on the WinBUGS, but have a much better and a faster way of some of the samples. He had really spent a lot of time developing some of the samples out there, and he has the JAGS has a really similar syntax to WinBUGS, and also you can get to see some of the interface to use JAGS. And then also there's another scientist who recently gave a talk at the USC. He also have a software called Limbo. So I actually was really excited about this one because the likelihood the functions I have is no one ever have had it before. So a really good advantage of using Limbo is that you can define your own samplers or the likelihood distributions there. And also at the same times, this is some really good news for people who use STAN. So STAN has been a really emerging Bayesian tools out there. It was developed by a couple of professors from the Columbia University. I believe a couple of years ago, maybe 6 years ago, if you walk in our Meetup around the Columbia University, they actually talk about STAN a lot. They're trying to have people using these tools. So STAN has drawn definitely a lot of attentions out there, and it's a really active community. They also have a lot of tools out there, but I actually touched some information if you want to know more about it. Okay, cool. So why Bayesian? Of course, you learn from the data. Some people say it's your personal belief or not. And then you also know the uncertainty of the estimated parameters. So if you start to use Bayesian, you don't assume the parameters fixed anymore. You actually get to see what the parameters, the distribution of the parameters change when you get to collect more data. And then what is JAGS? So JAGS stands for just another Gibbs sampler. So it's developed by Martin Plumbers. He also, I think in the UCR 2017 conference, he gave like a workshop just to use JAGS. So if you're really into that, I highly recommend it to listen to that workshop just to hear what the inventor of Bayesian language get to say and how to use this one. Okay, so why JAGS and why not WinBUGS or STAN? So this is a really personal takeaway. And then, so first, WinBUGS has been historically very important, but there is not much developments going on right there. And then I always think that if you choose a language, you also choose the community behind it. So in terms of that, I don't really highly recommend it WinBUGS. So JAGS has a very similar syntax to WinBUGS. So for most of the times, sometimes you want to look at examples. You don't really have to look into JAGS examples. You actually just can see a WinBUGS examples, and then you can pretty much just write down your JAGS models. And also, JAGS has a really good interface. You don't have to go into the JAGS software and deal with all the new commands you have to learn. Everything's in R. You can just easily call JAGS from R. And this is another, kind of my summary of what's the difference between the JAGS and then STAN. For JAGS, it has been there for a really long time. You really get to see a really rich, either materials out there, and then it's very easy to learn and run it. And then you do have to recompile the model, and then I don't think it's the case for STAN. And then, but for the JAGS, as I can know or learn in the past 4 years when I was in the community, there's not many developers out there to help you out as compared to STANs. If you just post the questions there quickly, there's a lot of people replying trying to help you out. And then some of the tools like visualization tools, I don't think JAGS has a really good advantage over the STANs. You really have to check out. And which one's faster, it totally depends. There's a lot of experiments out there trying to compare the speed of JAGS and the STAN. I would say the results is inconclusive. The reason I primarily use JAGS because the STAN doesn't support discrete sampling. I'm not gonna go too much into that. It's just my example, the models I deal with, only JAGS can do the job. Only JAGS can do the job. Yeah. And of course, I've using JAGS a lot. I've been googling all the bugs and how to plug in some of the methods. So now I'm gonna just quickly show you some of the examples, and then how to run JAGS and how to do Bayesian analysis in R. So first, install your R Studio. Of course, install your JAGS, and then when you install this R2 JAGS, so it's an interface to link the JAGS and R. So once you install it, this package is gonna automatically tell where the JAGS are. So don't worry about that. And And then this is some of the demos just to show Bayesian inference, but I don't think I have time to do that right now. So we're just gonna jump into the examples I have. So the example I made up for today is a common question I get to ask myself once a month, which is every time when I organize a meetup, how much pizzas I need to order. And then, of course, people see that show in the meetup registration page does not necessarily reflect the people going to show up. So what the best way to do is you can do a Bayesian analysis on that, because let's say that you have 6 people sign up the meetup, so the people going to show up is somewhere between 0 and 60, and then so a really key parameter to model over here is the proportion of people going to show up. So what I'm going to do over here is by Y, it's I grabbed the data from the meetup because we actually only have like records for 3 meetup. We actually force people to sign in, and then just like about this people who showed up, who signed up the meetup, and then N is the actual number of the people who showed up, that day, because of course it's about like half, a little bit more than half. So we'll see that if we're gonna run Bayesian analysis on that, what proportion gonna show. Of course, write a model. A pain of doing Bayesian analysis is, guess what? You have to specify every single parameters. The feeling is like you have to write the loss function of the linear regression model, and then you have to optimize that. It's a little bit similar to that too, but not exactly. So here is an example. And for example, in R, if you want to simulate some data, for example, number of the people who show up, it's distributed as a binomial distribution with the total number of the people who sign up on the meetup page, and of course there's a parameter which is the proportion. It's a fraction between 0 and 1, and then we are gonna place a prior distribution on that, which is a uniform distribution, because uniform prior, because I don't want to assume anything. I just think that this proportion is going to be any numbers between 0 and 1. And the reason I want to put this here, because as you can see here, the way you write in the JAGS is pretty similar to what you write in R. That this is actually the model is going to plug in and then read it by JAGS. And then the only thing has to be a change is you're not going to have like, the arrow equal sign equal to. You're going to change it to that if it's like a parameters. And if it's, if it's just like a constant, you can still use the equal sign. And then this is some like, more details about the syntax, but I don't have time for this page. It's, sorry, yeah. But usually the process will be you load the R2 JAGS library. So this library is going to detect where your JAGS is. And then second, you're going to specify the model. So this is just the models I told you about. Out of the 3 meetups I organized in the past, and then I'm going to have like the people who actually show up distributed as a binomial distribution of the people who sign up, and also a parameter theta. And then parameter theta is going to be distributed as a uniform distribution between 0 and 1. Give it the data right there, N, Y, and then tell JAGS which parameter I want it returned, which is the, theta. And then, of course, there's different versions of JAGS you can run. Currently, there are like 3 interfaces. Every single of them has their advantages, but right now, it doesn't really make a difference, just if you just want to do like a Bayesian analysis. So what you're going to do is, by using these functions, and then tell what model it is, which is like the model string, the long things I specify, and then plug in the data, and then tell which parameters I want it to observe, which is the theta, and I'm gonna use 2 chains and how many iterations I want it to run. And then after you do that, it's gonna run MSMC procedures behind with it a little bit, and then you're gonna have your results ready. So here, I don't think you need the first one. Is the events just like the goodness fit of the model. So the key information we want to take away when I look at that is actually the distribution of the theta. So usually when you see like a really noisy things like going up and down, it usually says like the MSMC procedures run really successfully. You get a really good mixing of the 2 chains. But if you see them separate flinch, now that is a bad sign. And then you can also get to see the distribution of the fraction I just told you about, see, somewhere between the 0.5, but not exactly. And here is just like another tools you can use, be able to visualize that. It's much prettier, and also get to have some like publication ready pictures for you as well. And of course, you don't always just to get the results ready there. It sometimes takes a much longer time to run. You also make sure like the chains get converged. So, for example, that if it fails to converge, there is some functions out there. Make sure it's going to converge. For example, it's going to take the models run for 20 times or for like 300 iterations or so as far as it meets the converged criteria. And the reason I also have another example is to give you an example of a weak prior or the strong prior, because as I mentioned before, the models I firstly run is I just assume that I have no prior information about the proportions. Even though when I first organized the Meetup meeting, somewhere some people told me, I think it's Ryan, he told me it's about 60% of people are going to show up. So that's the prior information I have. And actually, I can plug in that data into the model as well. So that's why I was saying that if I plug in the 60%, told by Ryan to the model, I actually have a really good example of like weak prior, which is like I know nothing as compared to the strong prior. Definitely, this is going to affect the final results you have. And this is just like an example. I also plot them as well. And then I think before, without know anything, is actually much closer to the left side. It's like around 0.5. But if I actually told the model that, if someone told me this actually around 60%, it's actually get to shifted towards to 60%, well, as compared to this one. Yeah. Okay. And then this is very important because I know people get really excited, I get to specify the prior distribution of every single parameters for my model. That's something I have never had a chance to handle before. Usually it's just black box. As compared if you run linear regression, how simple is that? But as compared to this, you have to, it's very excited, but also sometimes it gets really tiring if you're gonna do it 100 times. Especially if you think about if you have like 20 or 30 parameters you need to plug into the models. So that's why JAGS actually has some like syntax can allow you just to run things as the linear regression model. So this is, I think, it's a function in the run JAGS that you don't have to write the low script that the low language script that understand by the JAGS. You can just run as it is. It's actually a syntax really similar to LMR4 package. So pretty much like specify the family and then also the formula there, the data. It's gonna do the same job as for you. Okay, so pretty much the last couple of slides. So those are the resources I highly recommend it. So if you get 2 hours, definitely go through the workshop that Martin did in the user R's conferences. If you only have 5 minutes, this is a really good example you should go through just to see what's the pipeline of doing a Bayesian analysis. And they have all the data, so you can just download and then run it from your local computer. And then this is a really 2 great example books I have recommended, because every time when I try to Google something, it's always going to go back to these 2 books. So trust me. And then a lot of people doesn't like the second book because it's too cute to be a Bayesian analysis book. Has a lot of dots. Guess what? It's not that easy. It's the base rule. It's the base rule on the book. It's the prior distribution. Multiplied by the likelihood, and then you get to see the posterior distribution. So I actually didn't know this until I decided to do this talk. And I was like, oh, this is something I've never seen it before. Yeah. And of course, I think you probably know I'm actually a big fan of Stan as well. Even though I've never used it, I'm really jealous of the Stan community. Definitely check out. And then this is a talk given by Sevilla Kim. So she's a PhD student of political science from Caltech. She recently gave a talk at our Meetup and about the Stan, and she get a really good coverage about all the samples behind a lot of the theory and also application of that. And that's it. Sorry, a little bit go over time. Yeah. So the slides is online, and you can ask me. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
I noticed on one of the slides, I think you have the trace plot, the x-axis started at 1,000, so I'm assuming the first 1,000 was a burden. Is that a default parameter, or did you have to specify
Oh
that?
yeah, good question. So I think they do have like default parameters. So I think it was like 1,000 also. Sometimes it's like 500. Yeah. So you have to specify. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to talk about like burning and also the data you want to collect it. Yeah.
But they have parameters where you can modify all that in the code, but there are
Yeah.
also defaults.
Yes.